Breaking. The British establishment has just been hit by a political tidal wave so calculated, so silent, and so devastating that it has left Prime Minister Keir Starmer effectively paralyzed in his own seat of power. While the government was busy projecting an image of measured stability, Nigel Farage has executed a strategic masterstroke that didn't just change the headlines, it shifted the very ground beneath Downing Street. And here is the part that is sending shockwaves through the heart of Westminster. Starmer didn't see it coming, and now he has no way out. The momentum has flipped in an instant. The trap has snapped shut. What you are about to witness is the systematic dismantling of a narrative that took months to build, destroyed in a single afternoon of high-stakes political theater. Before we break down how this collapse is happening, you need to understand that this isn't just a bad news cycle for the Prime Minister. It is an existential threat to his authority. The day began with the usual choreographed precision of a government in control, but it is ending in a state of absolute, unmitigated panic. The morning started behind the heavy, reinforced doors of Number 10 with an air of smug invincibility. Keir Starmer's inner circle, a collection of the most disciplined political operatives in the country, had spent weeks preparing for this moment. They had a series of high-level policy announcements designed to showcase a new era of British leadership, a vision of calm, technocratic efficiency that was supposed to bury the populism of the past forever. There were no clouds on the horizon. The press was prepped with exclusive leaks, the ministers were rehearsed to the point of exhaustion, and the Prime Minister was ready to take the podium to claim his victory. It was supposed to be a day of institutional strength, a demonstration that the grown-ups were finally back in the room, and that the era of chaotic politics was over. This was Starmer's safe space, policy, process, and the quiet dignity of bureaucratic power. His team moved with the absolute confidence of people who believed they owned the clock, the conversation, and the future of the country.
But then the atmosphere began to curdle. Without warning, a digital detonator was pressed that bypassed every gatekeeper the establishment had built. Just as Starmer was adjusting his tie and stepping toward the microphone for what was meant to be his crowning moment of the month, news began to filter through that Nigel Farage had executed a move of such surgical precision that it made the government's plans look obsolete before they were even uttered. It wasn't a loud protest or a chaotic rally. It was something far more dangerous, a perfectly timed, high-visibility intervention that shifted the national gaze away from the Prime Minister and toward a new, surging reality. That's when the first cracks appeared in the Downing Street facade. Suddenly, the phones in the heart of power weren't ringing with questions about the Prime Minister's policy. They were exploding with inquiries about Farage's move. The safe narrative was dead on arrival, and the air of invincibility vanished, replaced by a cold, creeping sense of dread that they had been baited into a trap they didn't even know existed. The brilliance of this political squeeze lies in its terrifying silence and the use of optics over rhetoric. While the government scrambled to find a senior spokesperson to push back or offer a counter-argument, Farage simply let the momentum do the work for him. He didn't need to shout when the visible struggle of the establishment spoke volumes. As the afternoon progressed, the contrast became unbearable for those inside the Westminster bubble. A Prime Minister looking increasingly reactive, defensive, and trapped behind a podium, while Farage appeared calm, advancing, and in total command of the national mood. It was a visual execution of power that no policy document could counter. Internal sources suggest that the mood inside Number 10 turned from confusion to pure, unadulterated fury within the hour as they realized they were being outmaneuvered in real time. Every attempt to reset the day or steer the conversation back to the government's agenda only made them look more desperate and disconnected from the reality unfolding on the streets. The fallout was immediate and scorched every level of the political class, leaving the Prime Minister's reputation as a master strategist in tatters. By the time the evening news cycles began, the headlines had undergone a total, ruthless transformation. The stories that were supposed to be about Starmer's vision for Britain were replaced by a singular, haunting question that began to echo through the halls of Parliament. Has the Prime Minister lost his grip?
Media analysts, who hours ago were praising the government's iron discipline, began to pivot with ruthless speed, sensing the blood in the water. They started pointing out the power trap that had been laid with such precision, noting how easily the government's authority had been bypassed. But then, the blow went deeper than just media optics. The institutional weight of Westminster itself began to tilt. Reports are now surfacing from deep within the civil service and the labor backbenches that a sense of profound unease is taking root. When a narrative slips this fast and this publicly, the pillars of support start to tremble. Junior ministers, sensing a shift in the wind, are reportedly beginning to distance themselves from the day's failures, while veteran MPs are whispering about a fundamental lack of political feel at the top of the party. And here's what makes it worse. The public reaction has been a landslide of redirected attention that the government simply cannot control. While Starmer was speaking to half-empty rooms of vetted reporters and friendly journalists, Farage was dominating the digital landscape, reaching millions of people who feel the establishment has once again failed to understand the pulse of the country. This isn't just a loss of a news cycle, it's the loss of the public's imagination.
The moral illegitimacy of the current leadership is now being debated in every pub, workplace, and living room across the nation, and the verdict is coming in fast. The power trap has exposed a fundamental, systemic weakness in Keir Starmer's political DNA. He is a man of the system, and the system is currently being bypassed by a force it doesn't know how to fight. Ordinary people are watching a leader who looks like he is reading from a script that no longer matches the reality of their lives or the intensity of their frustrations. Meanwhile, the victims of this political paralysis, the voters who were promised a steady hand and a new direction, are seeing nothing but a white-knuckled grip on a sinking wheel. This isn't just a bad day at the office for the government. It is a signal of a leadership collapse that may be irreversible because it has exposed the one thing a leader can never recover, the aura of being in control. The political signals are now flashing a brilliant, dangerous red across the entire map. In the corridors of Westminster, the whispers have turned into open, brazen speculation about how much longer this reactive mode can possibly last before a full-scale mutiny begins. A government that cannot control its own big day is a government that has lost the mandate of momentum, and in politics, momentum is the only currency that matters. The Prime Minister's allies are desperately trying to frame this as a momentary distraction, a glitch in the matrix, but the wider fallout suggests a permanent shift in the hierarchy of national influence. The establishment is in a state of profound shock, realizing too late that the rules of engagement have been rewritten right under their noses. That's when the true scale of the disaster becomes clear. Starmer is fighting a ghost he cannot catch in a room he cannot leave, while his opponent builds a new house next door.
As the sun sets over the Thames and the lights flicker on in a stressed and panicked Downing Street, the countdown to a total authority reset has begun. The imbalance of power is now so clear that even the government's most loyal media outriders are struggling to find a coherent defense. One side looks like the inevitable future, the other looks like a shivering relic of a dying order, clutching at the coattails of a prestige that no longer exists. Farage has not just dropped a political bomb, he has built a new political reality and invited the entire country to move into it, leaving Starmer standing alone in the ruins of his own carefully planned Tuesday. The trap is no longer just a metaphor, it is the Prime Minister's daily life, a cage built of his own caution and his opponent's daring. The authority that took years to cultivate and months to consolidate has evaporated in less than 12 hours of high-intensity political combat. But the most chilling part of this entire saga is what is currently being planned for the next move. With Starmer boxed in and unable to move without looking even more reactive, the floor belongs entirely to his rival, and the vacuum of leadership is being filled with a speed that is breathtaking. How long can a prime minister survive when the country is looking elsewhere for leadership and the headlines are being written by his greatest enemy? Is this the moment the record-breaking labor majority begins to feel like a heavy golden cage rather than a mandate for change? The headlines for tomorrow are already being printed, and they don't feature a prime minister in control. They feature a man who was outplayed on his own home turf. More revelations are expected to hit by morning, and the pressure is only going to mount until something breaks. Does Starmer have the raw political instinct to fight his way out of this squeeze, or has Nigel Farage just delivered the ultimate checkmate? The answer to that question will determine the fate of British politics for the next decade. Tell us what you think in the comments. Is this the beginning of the end for the Starmer narrative, or can he find a way to reset the trap? Stay tuned, because this power struggle is only just getting started, and the next revelation could be the one that brings the whole house down.
The question of leadership has now moved beyond the halls of Westminster and into the very fabric of the national identity. As the public watches this drama unfold, the sense of betrayal is palpable. People were promised a government that would be different, a government that would be immune to the circus of the past few years. Yet here they are, watching the same patterns of reactive, panicked management that defined the previous administration. The power trap isn't just a clever maneuver by Nigel Farage. It is a mirror being held up to the face of the Labour government, showing them a reflection they desperately wanted to avoid. It shows a leadership that is more comfortable with the mechanics of power than the heart of the people. This disconnect is the fuel that is driving the current crisis, and it is a fuel that Farage knows exactly how to ignite. As the hours tick by, the silence from Downing Street becomes more deafening. Every minute that passes without a strong, decisive response is another minute that Farage's narrative takes deeper root in the public consciousness. This is the squeeze in action. It is the slow, deliberate removal of political oxygen. In the press rooms and the digital forums, the conversation has moved on from what did the Prime Minister say to why hasn't the Prime Minister said anything. The power has shifted from the one who holds the office to the one who holds the attention. This is the new reality of British politics, a reality that Keir Starmer seems fundamentally ill-equipped to handle. The grown-ups are in the room, but the room is being bypassed by a movement that doesn't care about the furniture. But what makes this situation truly catastrophic for the government is the sense of inevitability that is now beginning to surround Nigel Farage. Every move he makes seems to be 2 steps ahead of the establishment's response. It's as if he is playing a different game entirely, one where the old rules of correct behavior and institutional respect are nothing more than obstacles to be swept aside. For the millions of people who feel ignored by the current system, this isn't just a political strategy, it's a liberation. They see a man who is willing to walk into the heart of power and flip the table, while the Prime Minister sits at the head of that table, trying to remember which fork to use. This contrast is the most powerful political weapon in the country right now, and it is being used with devastating effect. In the back rooms of the major parties, there is a growing realization that the old 2-party system is not just under threat, it is effectively dead. The power trap has shown that a single, well-placed individual with a deep understanding of the national mood can neutralize a government with a massive majority. This is a terrifying prospect for those who rely on the stability of the traditional political order. If the Prime Minister cannot protect his own narrative on a day of his own choosing, what hope does he have when the real crises, the economic shocks, the international tensions, the social unrest inevitably arrive? The trap is a proof of concept, a demonstration that the establishment is far more fragile than it appears. The media landscape, too, has been forever changed by this afternoon of drama. The traditional outlets, which for so long have acted as the primary filters for political information, found themselves sidelined as the story broke across social media and independent platforms. This is another layer of the trap, the removal of the government's ability to spin its way out of trouble. In the old days, a few calls to key editors could have buried a story or changed its tone. Today, the story moves at the speed of a click, and by the time the government's PR machine has warmed up, the verdict has already been reached by millions. This loss of control over the means of communication is perhaps the most significant blow of all to Starmer's authority. As we look toward the coming days, the pressure on Keir Starmer to do something will become overwhelming. There will be calls for a cabinet reshuffle, for a new communication strategy, for a bold new direction. But the problem isn't the strategy or the staff. The problem is the perception of the man at the center. Once a leader is seen as trapped or reactive, it is incredibly difficult to ever be seen as proactive again. Every move will be scrutinized for signs of weakness, every speech searched for hints of desperation. The power trap has turned the Prime Minister's greatest asset, his sense of calm, methodical process, into his greatest liability. It now looks like hesitation, like a lack of fire, like a man who is bringing a law book to a knife fight.
Meanwhile, Nigel Farage continues to advance, his confidence growing with every hour that the government remains on the defensive. He is no longer just a disruptor. He is the man who is setting the pace of British politics. This shift in status is the ultimate goal of the power trap. It is about more than just a single day's headlines. It is about who the public looks to when they want to know what is happening in their country. For a prime minister, there is no more dangerous position to be in than to be the second most important person in the national conversation. And as of this evening, that is exactly where Keir Starmer finds himself. The broader implications for the UK's political stability cannot be overstated. When the head of the government is seen to be easily outmaneuvered, it invites challenges from all sides. Other political actors, both within and outside the party, will see this as a sign that the Starmer era is far more vulnerable than the election results suggested. The power trap has provided a roadmap for how to destabilize this government, and you can be certain that others are already studying it. The era of calm that Starmer promised has been replaced by an era of high-intensity, unpredictable conflict, and the government is currently losing that conflict. As we reach the conclusion of this extraordinary chapter in British politics, the questions remain. Can Starmer reset the narrative, or is he now a passenger in his own premiership? Will the Labour Party stand by a leader who looks like he has been checkmated in the opening moves of the game? And most importantly, what does this mean for the ordinary people who are watching their leaders play these high-stakes games while their own lives remain in a state of uncertainty? The power trap has been sprung, and the consequences are going to be felt for a long, long time. The establishment is in chaos, the outsider is in command, and the country is left wondering what happened to the stability they were promised. The story of this crisis is far from over, and the next few days will determine whether the British government can ever truly regain the ground it has lost today.